So, as we head towards the summer months, college football fans everywhere are sitting back and waiting for the class of 2024 to really start heating up. Luckily for Alabama fans, they didn't have to wait long, because this weekend the Crimson Tide got a massive win for one of the top prospects available in the class of 2024, a top 150 player regardless of position, and one of the top defensive linemen in the nation, as four-star defensive lineman Jeremiah Beaman commits to the Crimson Tide. Today, we need to break down what this means. Before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited that Beeman commits to Alabama? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions seem small, but they are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. And we're less than 25 subscribers away from 19,000, and I'd love to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, who is Jeremiah Beaman? Well, Jeremiah Beaman, as I stated in the intro, is one of the top prospects in the class of 2024, regardless of position. And one of the things we always talk about, this class, the class of 2024, is absolutely loaded. Specifically, Beeman comes in as the number 107 player in the nation, the number 13 defensive lineman, and a top 10 player in the state of Alabama. And he stands 6'4", 265 pounds. And whenever you start really diving into Jeremiah Beaman, one of the things you realize is he can do it all. There are clips of him dunking a basketball. There are clips of him running relays in track, and especially when you turn on his football film, there's a lot to love. Because he was beating people in a variety of ways, whether it was speed, power, finesse, you name it, he was being disruptive. And one of the things that instantly stood out to me might sound kind of boring, but it was his gap discipline. Because when you get to the next level, gap discipline is going to be everything. If you're asked to hold the edge, that's exactly what your coaching staff wants you to do. Be that last line of defense in case there's a reverse. And whenever you turn on his high school film, it's very clear he already understands those concepts. Several times he was asked to set the edge, and he did so. Whether the play seemed like it was going away from him or not, he did his job. And whenever the play bounced back, there he was to account for it. That type of gap discipline, that type of understanding what your job is, how to do your job so that it benefits all other 10 guys on the football field in your jersey, I love that, especially for a guy that was in his junior year of high school. That level of discipline is only going to keep getting better and better. So for Alabama, I think you get a massive win. I think this is a guy that could absolutely rise up the recruiting rankings. He does a lot at a high level. And another thing, he's got a lot of versatility. He's got the athletic ability to do a lot on this defensive line, and I think when you look at that, it has to get exciting. This is a guy that multiple other institutions undoubtedly wanted. He has got a ton of athletic ability, a ton of explosion, and especially when you look at what that means for a defensive lineman, this is the type of guy that college football teams everywhere are trying to add in by the bucket load. But what does this mean for Alabama's class as a whole? Well, this gives them 7 commits in the class of 2024 and puts them within the top 20 classes in the nation. And for Alabama, they're one of 3 classes that come inside the top 20 with less than double-digit numbers in their class. The other 2 being the Florida Gators and the Clemson Tigers. But for Alabama, they yield the highest average recruit rank in the nation as we currently sit here and talk. So the class is really, really impressive. It just doesn't have the numbers yet. And it's going to be really interesting to see as the months continue to progress what work this coaching staff does. Because we know Alabama recruits at the highest levels of college football year in, year out. And I think this class right here has got a really sneaky good foundation. One, people aren't talking about as much. But if we specifically focus in on the defensive line, I think this paves the way for good news for Alabama. Last recruiting cycle, we talked time and time again about how the biggest need for that Alabama class was the interior of the defensive line. And though they got several guys that Alabama fans are very excited about and the coaching staff are very excited about, we know what SEC football is. We know that in order to be successful in the SEC, your trench play has got to be pristine and you have got to have a lot of depth, both on the offensive line and the defensive line. So anytime you can go out there and get a top defensive lineman linemen in the nation, I think it's a compelling factor, but especially when you start diving in as to how good this defensive line class is in the class of 2024. Because if we really look at it, there are 8 defensive linemen in the top 50 prospects regardless of position. There are 12 defensive linemen in the top 100 prospects. There are 31 defensive linemen in the top 300 prospects. So if you have a need at the defensive line, this is certainly a good class to address it. Luckily for the Alabama Crimson Tide, they didn't have to go far to address that need, as they had to remain in state. So what does this mean for Alabama going forward? Well, personally, I think Alabama is in a situation where the snowball is about to start rolling, and how big it gets is going to be something we all have to watch. But one thing I do find compelling, Alabama has players in this recruiting cycle that are recruiting just as ferociously as the staff. And whenever you have players that are recruiting for your class, good things tend to happen. Look at last year with Richard Young. He was recruiting ferociously for Alabama, and several players ended up committing. Now, I'm not saying Richard Young was the factor, but I am saying that it certainly helped, and it certainly didn't hurt Alabama's chances at any of these prospects. But I can't wait to hear from all of you. In my opinion, this is a massive win, only strengthening Alabama's 2024 class. And Jeremiah Beaman is a guy that when you turn on the film, he can do it all. He is a very gifted prospect, incredibly athletic and explosive, and that's exactly what you're looking at when you're talking about these interior defensive line guys. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See you.